Welcome to ProSex Studios, and today we're talking about a piece of BDSM/fiction wherein the Winter Soldier and Harley Quinn slap each other around in the nude. It's called I, Tonya. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share. So, I, Tonya is, of course, the drama starring Margot Robbie as Tonya Harding and Sebastian Stan as Jeff Gillooly, her, life partner, really. Absolutely tremendous film, terrific performances from Stan, who is really a very talented performer, and Robbie, who is one of the standouts of her generation. In a supporting role, we have the always terrific Allison Janney as Tonya's mother, Lavona, the Venom Geyser. So this movie is sort of a dramatic interpretation of interviews done with Tonya Harding and Jeff Gillooly many years after Tonya Harding was an Olympic figure skating competitor. And of course, Nancy Kerrigan, one of her biggest rivals, got whacked on the knee with a police baton at practice. What I do here on this channel is talk about the attitudes presented about sexuality in popular film and television shows. And surprise, surprise, those attitudes are often negative. People think we live in a very sexually permissive culture, but we actually live in a culture that's puritanical in the way it shakes its finger at you about sexuality. Don't do it, kids! The sexuality in this film is all about Tonya Harding's relationship with Jeff Gillooly. They meet when Tonya is a teenager. She has already been ice skating for many years and is dedicated, obsessed with the sport. She's a teenager, he's a few years older. They go on their first date when she is 15. Her mother, Lavona, goes along on the date. This is Tonya's first date ever with anyone. Here's Lavona making it incredibly awkward and uncomfortable. We don't get to see Tonya and Jeff so much as hold hands before we see them on a date that goes very, very badly because of the interference of a third party. This is negative meme number one. I have a number of negative memes that are constantly repeated in movies and television. This is the wanting disaster. Wanting sex, pursuing sex, even to the point of being 15 years old and going out to the pizza parlor with a guy, leads to a bad result. It's followed very quickly by some bad result. Sometimes it's a direct causal relationship, and sometimes it's just that the bad result happens immediately after. But it's designed to make you feel anxious about your own sex life, and in this case the bad result is that her mother turns the date into a disaster. But once Jeff and Tonya manage to sideline Lavona, they connect. She goes over to his house. He's working on his car in the carport. They're both from working class families, not much money there. And it's really a sweet and touching scene. Again, terrific performances from both these actors where they're trying to express their attraction to one another. They're afraid to do that here in their private moment. In the carport, finally they kiss. Hooray. Jump cut directly to a montage of domestic dysfunction and abuse. He smacks her while they're sitting in his truck somewhere, and Tonya breaks the fourth wall to say to the camera, "He started hitting me a few months in." Jeff says, "I'm sorry," in the truck, and she smacks him back. Cut to Tonya on her back, in bed, nude, legs spread, Jeff thrusting between them. She tilts her head back and up to say to us, the audience who aren't there, she breaks the fourth wall, to say, "My mom hits me. She loves me." This is the beginning of a montage of sex and violence between them, with Tonya telling the classic domestic abuse story in voiceover. "He beat the living hell out of me and I thought it was my fault." This is the only sex we see in the whole movie, and it is tied up like this with dysfunction and violence and horror at the way this relationship is being carried on. Now, of course, this movie is based on interviews that were done years later, and the movie keeps cutting back to older versions of Jeff and Tonya, played by the same actors, sitting in their modest working class kitchens talking about this, and their stories, of course, contradict each other. Jeff says he never hit her, but she hit him. She says, otherwise. But the point of the only sex scenes in the film is the negative meme, danger is sex. Sex and danger are often presented as the same thing. Sex is dangerous, danger is sexy. They have clearly a passionate sexual relationship, but there's also a lot of people getting punched in the face. By the way, the montage eventually switches to Jeff's version of the story. He claims he never hit her, but that she took a shot at him with a 12 gauge once while he was making a rapid exit from the kitchen. Tonya denies that. Still, dangerous sex. That's the point. No matter who is telling what degree of the truth, the situation was a bad one. Moving right along, in 1986 at the Skate America competition in Maine, the young Tonya, who's still living with her mother, gets a disappointing score. And at the dinner table that night, her mother, Levana, is absolutely vicious to her, and there's a screaming match with smashed plates and so on, where Levana almost instantly starts hurling insults at Tonya about her relationship with Jeff, calling her a whore. And so if you're fucking that mustache, you're going to start paying rent. I am not paying for you to act like a whore and live off me for free. They go from disagreeing about why she got a low score at the competition to her mother hurling insults at her about having a boyfriend. Nothing wrong with that, nothing unusual with having a boyfriend. Not a very good boyfriend in this case. But her mother is not saying to her, you should give up that Jeff, he hits you. No, she's saying to her, you are having sex and you are a terrible person for it. And this encounter ends with Levana throwing a knife with the words, you fucking whore! The knife sticks in Tonya's arm. Not much, but it sticks there. And this is where Tonya decides to move out of her mother's house and in with her boyfriend, Jeff. But as we've already seen, that's not going to go very well. Your problem is sex. This is another negative meme. When a protagonist has a sex life, pursues a sex life, is having sex with someone, it's often presented as their problem, their character flaw. And you can say that this is really being done with both Jeff and Tonya in this film. What is wrong with them? Their relationship is what's wrong with them. And their relationship is a passionately sexual one. This is also the wanting disaster. Tonya wants to have a sexual relationship with Jeff, and it leads to nothing but trouble. It leads to her getting smacked around by Jeff, and it leads to her mother throwing knives at her. So, the movie alternates between Tonya's skating career and Tonya's relationship with Jeff, which is a lot of screaming and nut kicking and face smacking, cops, restraining orders, divorce, and after the divorce, an incident with a .357 Magnum where Jeff threatens to kill her and or himself, according to Tonya. Jeff denies it. Tonya comes in fourth at the Olympics, and now she's a waitress, just like her mom. But her first coach, Diane Rawlinson, reappears in her life to tell her that the world has given Tonya Harding a second chance, and Tonya goes back into training, this time with a new look and new music. You see, part of the problem is that Tonya doesn't present like the sweet little all-American girl that the skating coaches want. She's too heavy metal, she's too coarse, she's too sexy. Your problem is sex. Somehow, Tonya thinks that the way to be more wholesome and all-American is to reunite with Jeff. So they get back together, which is demonstrated with a shot of the two of them in a bathroom while Tonya applies makeup to hide her bruises. This is not going well. And then we get to the incident. Jeff and his buddy Sean, who could have won a gold medal himself if there were an international dickweed competition, hatched the plan to start harassing Nancy Kerrigan with death threats. They just want to rattle her, they want to damage her poise, upset her so that she will not compete as well, or possibly refuse to compete at all for fear of being killed while on the ice. This is the original plan. They hatched this plan while they are sitting where? In a very unappealing strip club. Now it's these death threats that eventually mutate into Operation Baton to the Knee, although precisely who made the decision for Kerrigan to be attacked, whether that was Jeff or Sean or Tonya or all three of them, is a matter for debate, and the principal participants have never made it clear, and the movie doesn't make it exactly clear either. But the point is, where do they come up with this stupid plan that will embarrass them before the world and result in criminal convictions and the end of Tonya Harding's skating career? They come up with this stupid plan while they're in a very unappealing strip club. We see naked breasts twice in this movie, and regrettably, they are never Margot Robbie's. They are instead the breasts of a stripper who's seen in the background of this scene where they're coming up with the dumbest idea they've ever had. The second time we see naked breasts in this film is a little bit later, when Jeff is sitting in the same strip club drinking alone because his whole life has fallen apart and he's going to jail for a while because of Operation Baton to the Nape. By the way, Sean is played by the actor Paul Walter Hauser, who looks almost nothing like Channing Tatum, but is a damned interesting performer and gives a very effective performance in this film and deserves more attention. So, in summary, Tonya Harding, incredibly gifted athlete, a major competitor, on her way to Olympic gold, meets Jeff Gillooly. This is the worst experience of her life. She gets hit a lot, shot at least once, according to her own account. Jeff's account says she shot at him. Certainly a big mess. They also have a passionate sexual relationship, a wanting disaster, sex is what's wrong with you, or maybe it's villains who sex, depending on how you want to look at Jeff in this situation. I think it's villains who sex there. And her relationship with Jeff leads to her conviction in court. She's fines are imposed on her. She goes to jail for a while? Maybe not. Certainly is publicly embarrassed, and she's banned from participating in figure skating. She does some celebrity boxing. Now, do we ever have any hint that the older Jeff, the older Tonya, went on to have successful sexual relationships with anybody? Barely. We get a placard, goes up on the screen, says, "Today Tonya Harding works in landscaping and pool maintenance." Should have made a note about that. And she is happily married, and she wants everyone to know that she is a good mom. So we're told that she's married, but we never see that husband. We certainly never see a scene of her, kissing her husband or holding hands or otherwise engaging in any kind of physicality. That guy doesn't get a name. He does not appear. And what Tonya wants us to know is that she is a good mom, in contrast to her mother, who was terrible. This is another negative meme. This is called celebrating celibate marriage. The movies often put marriages in the forefront. This is the marriage that you should admire because it doesn't have the slightest hint of sexuality in it. So in the end, Tonya, awesome film, absolutely recommended. But the message is, as it almost always is, that sex is bad and stupid and villainous, and you should be ashamed of yourself for thinking about it. Like, subscribe, share around. Come back next week for more of the same. I'm Brian Downs. Thanks for your time.